Hey there folks, it's Blue here at Blue Bears Games, and today's video, as promised, will be the upgrade guide for the Tyranid Swarm Warhammer 40k Commander Precon. For this deck, I just wanted to suggest pure upgrades to the existing themes of +1/+1 counters and card draw without really disrupting the Tyranid tribal theme or the Ravenous mechanic. On the flip side of that, everyone knows about the green token doublers, so I won't suggest them even though they are absolutely pure upgrades. But I will tell you to add them, and as you play the deck, you should see what cards aren't working so well and replace them with the doublers. Before I go into the list, I want to once again remind everyone that if you need help with upgrading the mana fixing lands, please go to my Forces of the Imperium Warhammer 40k Precon upgrade guide, where you will find the general guide I did for all upgrade options for the mana fixing lands. Now, let's take a look at about a dozen or so cards that could be swapped in that would help make the Tyranid Swarm Warhammer 40k Commander Precon just a little better. First up, I will suggest adding in Karn's Bastion. The Proliferate ability works very well with +1/+1 counter themes, and there aren't too many cards that let you proliferate repeatedly. There are some others, but this will take up a land spot, leaving you much more needed space for the non-land section. To make room for the Bastion, I would say take out a basic land for it. I'm leaning towards an island because of how light the deck is on blue cards, but that's up to you. Next, I want to suggest upgrades to the ramp cards. Having access to green opens up some of the best ways to get land out of your deck and into play, making your draws better over time. They did include some good options, but I will also suggest adding Nature's Lure, 3 Visits, and the new version of this effect, Glimpse the Core. These 3 ramp cards are the cheapest to cast versions of this effect at 2 mana, and also fetch Forest specifically, which is good for grabbing dual lands with the Forest type. To make room for these 3, I would take out Explore, New Horizons, and Overgrowth. Explore isn't ramp, and the 2 enchantments might be ramp, but they aren't nearly as good as any of the 3 cards I suggested to swap in. Now I want to show you 2 creatures that I believe would be really good fits for this build. First up is Kodama of the West Tree. Just about every creature in the deck has a way to become a modified creature, and being able to fetch lands and put them into play is useful for every deck, let alone one that plays a lot of X spells. Adding to the idea of helping out modified creatures, Herald of Secret Streams would provide some nice synergy to the deck as well, since most, if not all, of the modifications that the deck has are +1/+1 counters. At its very core, this deck is just a combat-based tribal deck, so making all of your attackers unblockable just seems like a pretty good thing to do. My suggestions for what to remove are Gerson Starn Kelemorph and Genestealer Locust. It may seem strange to take out one of the most monetarily valuable cards from the deck, but honestly, Gerson wants a completely different strategy to fully utilize him, and honestly deserves to helm his own deck built around his abilities rather than be in the 99 of another commander's deck. Moving on, I have 3 enchantments to show you that I believe are just pure upgrades. I'll start with Unbound Flourishing because it just adds so much value to all X spells. Doubling the value of X for permanents for free, or copying spells with X in their cost, is a form of doubling that we don't see often, and allows your ravenous creatures to now trigger their card draw ability for about half the cost. Honestly, this may be the best possible upgrade option currently available to you. Next, I'll suggest Tribute to the World Tree. Is there a more perfect card out there for a counters and card draw theme? Probably not. While it's not the most powerful effect you can add, it's certainly one of the more synergistic. It makes weaker creatures stronger and turns stronger creatures into card draw engines, so what's not to love? The last enchantment that I'll suggest to add is Simic Ascendancy. Yes, it adds counters to things, but more importantly, it's an alternative win con. Combat-based strategies often have many counters to them, so having a non-combat based way to win can be crucial. Of course, this card will always be a target for removal, so when adding this, you may have to also add ways to protect it, so keep that in mind. To make room for these 3 enchantments, I would remove Death's Presence, Bread for the Hunt, and Goliath Truck. Death's Presence and Bread for the Hunt are just worse than Unbound Flourishing and Tribute to the World Tree, let's just be honest. And Goliath Truck is cute, but I've said it in the past, I just don't like vehicles. Now, recently we were given an artifact that could make for some really interesting interactions, Agatha's Soul Cauldron. The Cauldron starts off as a way to permanently get rid of cards that could be a nuisance, but turns into a card that could make your creatures do some really fun stuff. The most basic thing that you can do is remove someone's mana dork from their graveyard and turn all of your creatures with counters on them into mana dorks themselves, but after that, the sky's the limit. There are so many creatures out there with some really good activated abilities that you could end up with some of the craziest combos you've ever seen. That makes the Cauldron my choice for the most fun card you could add to the deck. I will be adding this to my Peer and Toothy deck as well, so I can see just what kind of crazy shenanigans I can come up with. To make room for the Cauldron, I would remove Bone Sabers because this effect is just kinda blah. 4 counters is a lot, but the Cauldron's effect adds way more excitement to the deck. Besides, how many counters do you really need? At some point, it's just overkill. And the last thing that I want to go over is a combo for the deck. When I do this section, I like to give combos that involve the commander itself, but like last week, I just couldn't find one. I did, however, find one that included one of the cards that was exclusively in the deck already, the Red Terror. Simply add All Will Be 1 to the deck, and you instantly have an infinite combo where you can deal infinite damage and place infinite counters on the Red Terror. Truth be told though, I thought about suggesting taking the Red Terror out for a bit, but then I realized this combo would fit well for the build, so I decided not to do that. Now, what to take out for this though is a little bit more difficult. I wanted to keep as many Tyranids in as possible, so I eventually decided to suggest taking out Starstorm. Yes, it's an X spell, but there are better ones than this, and adding an infinite damage combo piece that can kind of do the same thing anyway made the choice a little easier. Before I start to wrap this video up, I want to mention that there are 2 artifacts that you may also want to add to the deck, Ozolith the Shattered Spire and the Ozolith. Both synergize really well with any counter-based decks, but for me, I don't feel that they are entirely needed. Would they help forward the strategy of this deck? Absolutely. I just feel like they are another case of overkill, and I wanted to find some less used, fun cards to suggest for the video. However, if you feel the deck really wants these 2 artifacts, then by all means add them and you won't be disappointed. And there you have it, folks. My upgrade guide for the Tyranid Swarm Warhammer 40k Commander Precon. I said it a lot during the unboxing, but I will reiterate it again that I really like this deck, and it did have some nifty little toys that I can possibly scavenge to add to my Peer and Toothy deck. I would really like to see more of the Ravenous ability in the future, and it seems like it would be possible outside of the Warhammer 40k universe of Magic cards. I've got my fingers crossed that it does happen. So that's all I have for you this week, but please be sure to join me next week where I'll be unboxing and upgrading the final Warhammer 40k Commander Precon, Necron Dynasties. While I've enjoyed doing the Universes Beyond upgrade guides, I'll be happy to move on to the actual Magic Universe Precons for a bit, since I actually know the lore. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please remember to give the video a thumbs up, and I will see you all next week. Enjoy the rest of your day.